The summer of 1959 was hot. Brutally hot. The kind of heat that turns the West Texas sky white at noon and bleaches the wood of an old saloon until it looks like driftwood in the desert. The town was a small one, called El Paso de los Robles by the old-timers, but everyone just called it the Dust Town. It sat on the edge of the Chihuahuan Desert, a few hours south of the New Mexico line, and it had exactly two things going for it: a railroad station and a saloon. That summer, the saloon had a third thing. It had John Wayne. Wayne had come to the Dust Town in late June, with a crew of 40 men, 6 trucks of equipment, and a director named Howard Hawks. They were filming a Western. The kind of Western that would later become legend. The kind that needed a real desert, real heat, real dust on the boots of the men who walked across the screen. Hawks didn't want a Hollywood backlot. He wanted the truth. So he had brought his crew, his cameras, and his star to a town nobody had ever heard of, in a part of Texas that nobody ever visited. The locals were friendly at first. They came by the set in the evenings, watched the lights go up, watched the cameras roll. They asked for autographs. They brought their children. Wayne signed every single one. He always did. He never refused a kid asking for a signature. Never refused a mother holding a piece of paper. He'd take off his hat, and he'd lean down, and he'd say, "What's your name, son?" And he'd write it out, slow and careful, the way a man writes his own name on a marriage certificate. The locals loved him for it, but there was one man in that town who didn't love him. His name was Earl Briggs, if you asked him in a friendly way. Big Earl, if you didn't. He was 34 years old that summer. 6'3", 240 pounds, with shoulders that looked like they had been carved out of a single piece of oak. Earl had been a heavyweight boxer once. Not a famous one. He had never made it to the ranked fighters, never made it to the big fights in New York or Las Vegas. But he had fought 28 professional bouts in dirty arenas across Texas and Oklahoma. He had won 22 of them. He had knocked out 15 men cold, and now Earl worked the door at the Dust Town Saloon. Big shoulders, hard fists, a flat nose that had been broken 3 times. He drank a little too much. He talked a little too loud. And he had a particular kind of grudge. The kind some men carry against the world for never giving them what they thought they deserved. When Earl heard that John Wayne was filming a Western in his town, he did not get excited. He did not bring his children. He did not ask for an autograph. He sneered. "Movie cowboy," he said to the bartender. "Hollywood phony. Probably can't even ride a horse without a wire holding him up." The bartender, a man named Hank, laughed nervously. He had heard Earl on this kind of tear before. Earl didn't like men who got attention they hadn't earned. Earl thought every actor was a fraud. Every singer was a fraud. Every quarterback was a fraud. The only real men, in Earl's opinion, were the ones who had bled in a ring or a bar fight. The ones who knew what it felt like to take a punch and stay standing. He was a football player, Hank offered, wiping down a glass. "I read it somewhere." "Played at USC. Football player," Earl said. He spit on the floor. "That's not real fighting. That's running around with a leather ball. I've been hit by men who would kill John Wayne with one punch. You don't know what real is." Hank kept wiping his glass. He didn't say anything more. He had a feeling. Something was coming. It was a Friday night when Wayne walked into the saloon. The shoot had wrapped early that day. Howard Hawks had called it, at 4 in the afternoon, because the heat had risen so high that the cameras were jamming. The crew had scattered to their hotels. Wayne had gone back to his trailer, taken a shower, put on a clean shirt, and decided for the first time in 2 weeks to walk into town and have a beer. He was 62 years old that summer. His hair was beginning to gray. The lung cancer that would nearly kill him in 5 years was already growing inside him, though he didn't know it yet. He had been smoking 5 packs a day since he was 20. His knees ached. His back ached. He had been making movies for 33 years, and his body was the body of a man who had ridden 10,000 horses, fallen off 2,000 of them, and gotten up every single time. He pushed through the swinging doors of the saloon at 9 o'clock at night. The place went silent. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. There were maybe 30 people in the saloon. A few cowboys, a few oilfield workers, a couple of the local women, the bartender Hank, and Earl, standing by the door, his arms crossed over his enormous chest. Wayne nodded at the room, the way he always did. He took off his hat. He walked to the bar. "Beer," he said to Hank. "Whatever you got cold." Hank slid a bottle across the bar. He didn't say a word. He had seen Earl's face change the moment Wayne walked in. He could feel what was coming. Wayne took a long sip. He set the bottle down. He looked at his own reflection in the dusty mirror behind the bar. He looked tired, and then a voice came from behind him, loud, mocking. The kind of voice a man uses when he wants the whole room to listen. Well, well, well. Looks like the movie Cowboy came to see the real West. Wayne didn't turn around. He kept looking at his beer. He took another sip. "Hey," Earl said, louder now. "I'm talking to you, Hollywood." Wayne set the bottle down slowly. He took a breath. He turned around. Earl was standing in the middle of the saloon. His arms were still crossed. His chin was lifted. He was smiling in the way men smile when they've decided, before they even started, that they're going to win. "Can I help you?" Wayne said. His voice was low, calm. The same voice he used in his films when his character was about to do something the bad guys did not expect. Earl laughed. He turned to the room. "Boys," he said, "we got us a real Hollywood star here. Came all the way from Tinseltown to pretend to be a cowboy. Probably gonna ride off into the sunset with a stunt double tomorrow morning." A few of the men at the tables shifted uncomfortably. Some of them looked down at their drinks. None of them laughed. Earl turned back to Wayne. "Tell me something, John Wayne," he said, drawing out the name. "You ever been in a real fight?" "A real one. Not one with a director yelling cut every 30 seconds. A real fight, with a real man, where the loser goes to the hospital." Wayne studied him for a long moment. "Mister," Wayne said, "I came in here for a beer. I'm gonna finish my beer. Then I'm gonna leave, and I'd appreciate it if you let me do that without a problem." Earl took a step forward. "You'd appreciate it," Earl said. "Listen to him. You'd appreciate it. Hollywood manners. Don't want any trouble. Want to drink his little beer and go back to his trailer and let his stunt double do all the dangerous stuff tomorrow." Wayne didn't move. He didn't say anything. He just watched Earl, the way a man watches a rattlesnake. What Earl did not know, what nobody in that saloon knew, except maybe one or two old-timers who had been around in the early days, was a few things about John Wayne. He did not know that Wayne, in his youth, had been the starting tackle on the football team at the University of Southern California. That at 19 years old, Wayne had been a 6'4", 200-pound athlete who could break a man's jaw with his shoulder pads. He did not know that Wayne had grown up in the rough parts of Glendale, California, in the 1910s and 20s, in that the boys he had grown up with had taught him how to fight the old way. With closed fists, in alleys, behind buildings, where there were no referees, and no cameras, and no second chances. He did not know that on every film set Wayne had worked on, for 30 years he had been surrounded by stuntmen. Real stuntmen. Old cowboys. Old wrestlers. Old prize-fighters. Men who had come out of the rodeo circuit and the carnival fight tents of the 1930s. Wayne had spent thousands of hours in their company. He had let them teach him things. Where to plant your feet. How to throw a punch with your hips, not your arm. How to take a hit and stay upright. How to spot, in a man's eyes, the half-second before he was going to swing. He did not know that Wayne had once, at age 47, been jumped by 3 drunken sailors in a bar in Long Beach. The sailors had not known who he was. They had thought he was an old man. The next morning, all 3 of them had woken up in the county jail with broken ribs and concussions. And Wayne had walked out of the bar with nothing more than a bruise on his knuckles and a torn shirt. He did not know any of these things, because Wayne never talked about them, because that was not the kind of man he was. Earl thought he was looking at a movie star. Earl was wrong. "I'll tell you what, Hollywood," Earl said, taking another step forward. He was now about 10 feet from Wayne. "I'll make you a deal. Right here. Right now. You and me. 1 round. No cameras. No referees. Just you and me. The room went very still. Hank, the bartender, leaned forward. He started to say something. Wayne raised one finger. A small gesture, almost invisible, but Hank saw it, and Hank stayed quiet. "Mister," Wayne said, "I'm 62 years old. I'm tired. I came in here for a beer. You're a younger man, and from the looks of you, a stronger one. There's no reason for us to do this." "There's every reason," Earl said. "There's every reason. Because you walk around in this country like you're some kind of hero. Like you're some kind of cowboy. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of men like you taking credit for things you never did. I never put on a costume. I never got paid to pretend. I bled in a ring 28 times. I got the scars to prove it. And I'm telling you, right now, in front of all these people, that you ain't half the game. Men you pretend to be." Wayne looked at him. He looked at him. For a long time, the room held its breath, and then Wayne did something that nobody in that saloon ever forgot. He smiled, a small smile, sad almost. The smile of a man who has been somewhere he did not want to be and who knows he is going to have to be there again. "All right, son," Wayne said. "All right." He took off his hat. Slowly, he set it on the bar. He took off his jacket, the one he had put on after his shower an hour earlier. He folded it once. He laid it on top of the hat. He rolled up the sleeves of his shirt, slowly, methodically, the way a carpenter rolls up his sleeves before he starts on a piece of wood. He turned around. He walked to the middle of the saloon. He stood 3 feet from Earl. He looked into Earl's eyes, and he said, "Whenever you're ready." Earl grinned. He had been waiting for this his whole life, he thought. The chance to put down a Hollywood phony. The chance to prove, to everyone in the dust town, that real men were real men, and movie men were just children playing dress-up. He rolled his shoulders. He cracked his neck. He put up his guard, hands high, elbows tight, the way they had taught him in the gym in Lubbock 15 years ago. He stepped forward, and he threw his right hand. It was a good punch. A trained punch. A punch that had knocked 15 men cold in 28 bouts. Earl Briggs was not a great boxer, but he was a real boxer, and his right hand was a real weapon. The kind of punch that could end a fight before the other man even knew what was happening. It traveled, by the best estimates of those who were watching, exactly 19 inches from Earl's shoulder to the place where Wayne's jaw should have been. It did not connect, because Wayne was not there anymore. What Wayne had done, and people in the saloon argued about it for years afterward, because none of them quite saw it the same way, was this. He had watched Earl's right shoulder. Not his eyes, not his fists, but his shoulder. Because the shoulder is what tells you half a second before what a man is going to do. The shoulder loaded. Wayne saw it load, and in the half second between the load and the punch, Wayne had simply leaned. 6 inches to his right, the smallest possible movement. The kind of movement a man makes when he is shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Earl's right hand sailed past Wayne's left ear, and Wayne, who had been waiting for exactly that moment, who had known it was coming the way an old fisherman knows the tide is coming, brought up his own right hand. It was not a fancy punch. It was not a flashy punch. It was a short hook to the body. A punch that traveled maybe 8 inches. The kind of punch that an old fighter learns when he has run out of younger men's reflexes and has to make every movement count. It landed exactly below Earl's ribcage, on the left side just under the heart. Earl's eyes widened. His knees did not buckle. Not yet, but something happened in his face. A look that experienced fighters know very well. The look of a man whose diaphragm has just been hit so hard that his lungs cannot remember how to inflate. Earl tried to step back. Wayne stepped with him. One step. Smooth as a dancer, and Wayne's left hand came up. Not fast, not flashy, but timed perfectly. And caught Earl on the jaw, just below the right ear. A short, clean hook. The kind of punch that old prize fighters call a knockout punch, not because of how hard it is, but because of where it lands. Earl's legs gave out. He fell sideways. His shoulder hit the floor first, then his hip, then his head. His arms didn't even come up to break his fall. He was unconscious before he landed, out cold, dead asleep on the floor of his own saloon in front of 30 witnesses. In 8 seconds, 8 seconds. That was how long it took. 8 seconds from the moment Earl Briggs threw his first punch to the moment Earl Briggs hit the floor. The room was silent for a long time. Nobody moved. Hank, the bartender, was holding the same glass he had been wiping when Wayne walked in. He hadn't moved an inch in 6 minutes. His mouth was open. The cowboys at the tables stared at the floor where Earl was lying. Then they stared at Wayne. Then they stared back at the floor. They did this several times, as if their eyes did not quite believe what their eyes had just seen. Wayne stood there for a moment. He looked down at Earl. He frowned slightly. The way a man frowns when he has had to do something he did not want to do, and he wishes the world would give him reasons not to. He bent down. He felt Earl's pulse, with 2 fingers on the side of the neck. He nodded. Earl was still alive, still breathing, just out. Not seriously hurt. Just out. Wayne stood up. He walked back to the bar. He picked up his hat. He picked up his jacket. He put them both back on. He turned to Hank. "How much for the beer?" Hank just stared at him. Wayne pulled out his wallet. He counted out $2. He laid them on the bar. "For the beer," he said, "and for any inconvenience." He turned to look at the room. He didn't grin. He didn't gloat. He didn't even raise his voice. He just said quietly, "Tell him, when he wakes up, I didn't mean to embarrass him." He picked the fight. I gave him a way out. He didn't take it. "That's not on me." Then he tipped his hat to the room. "Evening, gentlemen," he said, and he walked out. The door swung behind him. Twice, 3 times. Slowly settling, for a full 30 seconds, nobody spoke. Then one of the cowboys, an old man named Charlie, who had been sitting in the corner the whole time, drinking quietly and watching everything, let out a long, low whistle. "Boys," Charlie said, "I just watched John Wayne knock out a heavyweight boxer in 8 seconds. Another cowboy, younger, said, 'Did anybody else see that left hook?' A third said, 'I didn't see nothing.' I blinked and Earl was on the floor." Hank finally set down his glass. He walked around the bar. He looked at Earl, lying on the floor, breathing slowly, peacefully. Like a man taking an afternoon nap. He shook his head. "Somebody," Hank said, "go get Doc Patterson." When Earl woke up 20 minutes later, the first thing he saw was the ceiling of the saloon. The second thing he saw was Doc Patterson's face leaning over him, holding a small bottle of smelling salts. "Earl," Doc said. "Earl, can you hear me?" Earl blinked. He tried to sit up. His ribs hurt. His head hurt. There was a bruise forming on the side of his jaw that would, in 12 hours, be the size of a baseball. "What happened?" Earl said. Doc Patterson glanced up at the ring of faces around them. "The cowboys, the oil field workers, Hank." "Earl," Doc said, "you remember the man who came in earlier?" Earl thought about it. The thinking was slow. His head felt like cotton. "The Hollywood guy," Earl said. "John Wayne." "That's right. He hit me. He hit you." Earl was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that the men in that saloon would repeat, over and over, for the next 40 years. "How?" Earl said slowly. "Did he do that?" Doc Patterson smiled. He patted Earl on the shoulder. "Earl," he said, "I think you might owe that man an apology. Word of what happened in the Dusttown saloon traveled fast. By morning, the story had reached the film crew. The director, Howard Hawks, called Wayne into his trailer at 9 o'clock. He had heard the rumors. He wanted to know what was true. Wayne sat down across from Hawks. He took out a cigarette. He lit it. "You knock out a man in a saloon last night, Duke?" Wayne looked at the ground for a long moment. "He picked a fight, Howard. I gave him 3 chances to walk away. He didn't take them." Hawks studied him. "Was he a fighter?" "Yes. Big man?" "Big enough." Hawks shook his head slowly. He let out a small laugh. "Duke," he said, "you're 62 years old." "Yes, I am. Don't get into bar fights." "Wasn't a bar fight, Howard." It was 8 seconds. Hawks laughed again. He stood up. He clapped Wayne on the shoulder. "All right," he said. "Get to makeup. We're shooting at noon." That afternoon, Wayne rode his horse across the dusty Texas plain in scene 17 of the film. He delivered his lines. He hit his marks. The cameras rolled. The crew worked. The desert burned around them. By sundown, they had 3 good takes. And that night, when the crew gathered at the hotel for dinner, nobody mentioned the saloon. Wayne ate quietly. He went to bed early. He never spoke of it again. But other people did. Earl Briggs, for the rest of his life, and he lived another 31 years, dying in 1990 at the age of 65, never quite recovered. And not physically. The bruise on his jaw healed. The ribs healed. He was back at the door of the saloon 2 weeks later. But something in him had broken that night. Something that had nothing to do with bones or muscle. Earl had lived his whole life believing in a certain kind of man. The hard man. The fighter. The man who had earned his scars. He had dismissed John Wayne as a phony, as a fraud, as a Hollywood man wearing a costume. And on a hot August night in 1959, that Hollywood man had put him on the floor in 8 seconds. With less effort than Earl himself used to lift a bar stool, Earl thought about it. For years he thought about it. He started telling the story, after a few drinks, to anyone who would listen. He told it differently each time. Sometimes he said Wayne had been lucky. Sometimes he said Wayne had cheated. Sometimes he said Wayne had hit him with a hidden weapon. But late at night, when the saloon was empty, Earl would tell the truth. He would lean across the bar at Hank, the new bartender. Hank had left in 1968, and he would say, very quietly, "You want to know what I learned that night, kid?" The new bartender would nod, and Earl would say, "I learned that you don't ever judge a man by the costume he wears for a living. Some men are exactly what they look like. Some men are nothing like what they look like. And the ones who are quiet, who don't brag, who don't make threats, those are the ones you watch out for. Because those are the ones who can put you on the floor in 8 seconds. And you never see it coming." He would sit back. He would finish his whiskey. He would shake his head slowly. "John Wayne," he would say. "John Wayne, I called him a phony. I called him a Hollywood cowboy. And he beat me in 8 seconds. And then he tipped his hat, and he paid for his beer, and he walked out into the night. He would look up at the ceiling. That," he would say, "was the most American thing I ever saw." The story of what happened in the Dusttown Saloon was never written down in any newspaper. Howard Hawks never spoke about it publicly. John Wayne never gave an interview about it. The crew, who knew about it, kept it among themselves out of respect for Wayne's wishes. He did not want it told. He did not want to be remembered for things like that. He wanted to be remembered for his films, for his work, for the characters he played. Not for putting a drunken doorman on the floor of a small-town saloon. But the people of the Dust Town remembered. The cowboys remembered. The oilfield workers remembered. Hank, the old bartender, remembered until the day he died. And every now and then, in some bar in some small town in Texas, an old man will lean across to a younger man, and he will say, "Let me tell you a story about a movie star and a heavyweight boxer. In the night in 1959, when one of them learned that the other one was not what he seemed, the young man will lean in, the old man will start to talk, and John Wayne, somewhere, wherever good men go when they ride off into the sunset for the last time, will probably wish that the old man would stop telling the story, because that was not the kind of man he was. That was not how he wanted to be remembered. But it was. In the end, who he was, a quiet man, a patient man, a dangerous man, when he had to be, and the most American thing, as Earl Briggs once said, that anybody ever saw. Some say the story of Earl Briggs and John Wayne in the Dusttown Saloon is just a tall tale. His story passed down through generations of West Texas cowboys, growing larger with each retelling. Some say it never happened. Some say it happened differently. Some say there was no Earl Briggs at all. But the old men of West Texas, the ones who were there, the ones who saw it with their own eyes, they swear it is true. They swear that on a hot August night in the summer of 1959, a heavyweight boxer challenged John Wayne in a saloon. And 8 seconds later, that boxer was on the floor. Believe what you want to believe, but the next time you watch an old John Wayne movie, the next time you see him walk into a saloon or face down a villain, or stand quietly in front of a man who is bigger and meaner and louder, remember this. Some of those scenes were acting, and some of them weren't. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that some men are exactly what they appear to be, and some men are far more, please take a moment to subscribe. We have more stories coming. Stories about the Duke. Stories about the men he fought beside, and the men who underestimated him. Stories that have been passed down through Hollywood and through the small towns of America, told around campfires and bars and dinner tables, by the people who were there. They don't make men like the Duke anymore, but as long as we keep telling these stories, we make sure he is never forgotten. Until next time, keep your powder dry. Keep your word good, and ride tall in the saddle. The Duke would have wanted it that way.